The market of Aurelian Prime never slept. Even under the dim violet glow of its twin moons, the sprawling trade district pulsed with life. Hundreds of species moved through its towering corridors and open plazas, tentacled merchants shouting prices in bubbling dialects, crystalline beings humming softly as they displayed energy cores, reptilian traders bartering over rare metals. And among them, humans were tolerated. Not respected, not feared, just tolerated. Which was why most humans kept their heads down. But not all of them. Kale Wren stood near a rusted railing overlooking the lower trade deck, his arms folded as he watched the chaos below. He wasn't there to shop. He wasn't there to trade. He was there to observe. Ex-soldier. Freelance security. Human. 3 labels that, on Aurelian Prime, were equally inconvenient. He wore a simple jacket, scuffed boots, and a neutral expression. Nothing about him stood out, at least not at first glance. But those who looked closely noticed the way his eyes tracked movement, the way his posture stayed balanced, ready. A predator disguised as a passerby. Kale exhaled slowly, his breath fogging faintly in the cooler air currents above the lower deck. Another quiet night.
Or so it seemed.
It started with a scream. High-pitched.
Sharp.
Not the usual marketplace chaos. Kale's head snapped toward the sound instantly. Below, in the open plaza, a small crowd had begun to form, not in curiosity, but in that dangerous way crowds gathered when something violent was happening. Kale didn't hesitate. He moved. Pushing through the massive bodies, Kale felt the tension before he saw the scene. The air was thick, heavy with anticipation. And then he saw her. She was on the ground. Her skin shimmered faintly, an iridescent blue, marked with delicate lines of bioluminescent patterns. Her species wasn't common here, but Kale recognized it as Solari. Peaceful.
Diplomatic.
Weak. In the eyes of predators. 3 figures loomed over her.
Tall. Broad.
Armored in crude plating. Dravik enforcers. They were laughing. One of them kicked her lightly, not enough to kill, just enough to hurt. Get up, one growled, his voice deep and guttural. Or, do your kind prefer begging?
She didn't respond.
Not because she wouldn't, because she couldn't. Blood, silver, not red, streaked the ground beneath her. Kale felt something cold settle in his chest. Around them, the crowd watched. No one moved. No one intervened. Because this wasn't unusual. Because on Aurelian Prime, strength decided everything. And right now, she had none. Enough. The word cut through the noise like a blade. The laughter stopped. The Dravik turned. So, did everyone else. Kale stepped forward.
Calm. Steady.
Human. For a moment, there was silence. Then one of the Dravik barked a laugh. A human, he sneered. You're lost, soft skin. Kale didn't respond immediately. His gaze flicked briefly to the Solari woman. She was barely conscious. Breathing but weak. Good. Still alive. He stepped closer. I said, Kale repeated, his voice quieter now, but somehow more dangerous. That's enough. The tallest of the Dravik tilted his head, studying him. You think you're brave? He asked. Or just stupid? Kale shrugged slightly. Maybe both. A few in the crowd shifted uneasily. Humans didn't talk like that here. Not to Dravik. Not if they wanted to live. The Dravik leader stepped forward. You should walk away, he said. This doesn't concern you. Kale's eyes hardened. It does now. Another laugh. But this one wasn't as confident. The first strike came, without warning. The Dravik lunged, his massive arms swinging toward Kale's head. To the crowd, it looked fast. To Kale, it looked slow. He moved. A slight shift. A step. A pivot. The blow missed. And in the same motion, Kale struck. Once. A precise hit to the Dravic's throat. The alien staggered back, choking. The crowd gasped. The other two reacted instantly. Weapons drawn. Energy blades flickering to life. Now it was serious. Kale exhaled.
So be it.
The fight was brutal. Not flashy. Not theatrical. Efficient. Kale moved like he'd done this 1,000 times because he had. He dodged the first blade, catching the wielder's wrist and twisting sharply. There was a crack, followed by a roar of pain. The second attacker came from behind. Kale spun, ducking under the strike and driving his elbow into the alien's midsection. The force sent him stumbling. The crowd began to back away now. This wasn't entertainment anymore. This was something else. The Dravic leader recovered, his rage boiling over. "You'll die for this," he roared. Kale didn't answer. He stepped forward, and for the first time, the Dravic hesitated. It didn't last long. The leader charged again, faster this time, stronger. But anger made him sloppy. Kale saw the opening. He took it. A sidestep.
A grab.
Momentum redirected. The massive alien crashed into the ground with a thunderous impact. Before he could rise, Kale was on him. A single, decisive strike. And then, silence. The plaza was still. 3 Dravic enforcers lay defeated. A human stood over them, and no one understood what they were seeing. Kale straightened slowly, his breathing steady. He turned. The Solari woman was still on the ground. He walked toward her.
Carefully. Gently.
Up close, she looked even more fragile. Her glowing patterns flickered faintly, like a dying light. Her eyes opened slightly as he knelt beside her. Fear, confusion, and something else. Hope. "Hey," Kale said softly. "Stay with me." She tried to speak, but only a faint sound escaped her lips. Kale frowned. She needed medical attention. Fast. He glanced around. The crowd had thinned, but many still watched from a distance. None stepped forward. Of course they didn't.
Kale sighed.
Figures. He slid one arm beneath her carefully, lifting her with surprising ease. She was light. Too light. As he stood, a voice called out. "You shouldn't have done that." Kale turned. An older alien stood at the edge of the crowd, his features lined with age. "Those weren't just thugs," he said. "They're connected." Kale shrugged. "They started it." The alien shook his head. "That won't matter." Kale adjusted his grip on the Solari. "It never does." And with that, he walked away. The medical district wasn't far, but every step felt longer. Not because of the distance, because of the eyes watching him. Word was spreading. Fast. By the time Kale reached the clinic, the tension in the air was palpable. Even here, among healers and neutral ground, whispers followed him. He ignored them, pushed through the doors. "Help her," he said simply. The staff hesitated, just for a second. Then professionalism took over. They moved quickly, taking her from his arms and placing her on a hovering bed. Scanning. Stabilizing.
Treating.
Kale stepped back, watching. Waiting. Minutes passed. Then more. Finally, one of the medics approached him. "She'll live," they said. Kale nodded. "Good." But the medic hesitated. "You've made a powerful enemy." Kale gave a faint, tired smile. "Not my first." Hours later, the Solari woman opened her eyes. The room was quiet, dimly lit, and Kale was still there, sitting nearby, waiting. She looked at him, her gaze clearer now. "You stayed," she whispered. Kale shrugged lightly. Seemed like the right thing to do. She studied him for a moment. Why? It was a simple question, but not an easy one. Kale leaned back slightly, because no one else did. She was silent for a long time. Then, "Thank you." 2 words, but they carried weight. Kale nodded. "Get some rest," he said. "You'll need it." She closed her eyes again, but this time there was no fear. Outside, the city hadn't changed. It was still harsh, still unforgiving, but something had shifted, just a little, because now, people had seen what a human could do, not just in war, but in standing up. And somewhere, in the shadows of Verelian Prime, others were watching too, not with fear, but with interest. The attack didn't end that night. It spread. Whispers turned into stories. Stories turned into something more. A symbol. A question. What happens when someone finally says enough? Kale didn't try to become anything. He didn't seek attention, didn't want recognition, but it followed him anyway, because one act, one moment of defiance, was enough to change everything. The Solari woman recovered, and when she stood again, she wasn't alone. Not anymore. And as for Kale, he returned to the streets. Same as before. Watching. Waiting. But now, he wasn't just tolerated. He was remembered. Because in a world where no one stepped in, one human did. And that was enough to remind the galaxy that sometimes the smallest voice is the one that changes everything.